Okay, so we'll begin the budget meeting. We have proposed expenditures for the fiscal year June 1st, 2024 to May 31st, 2025. Charles, do you want to give us a report?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Charles.
First, you have two documents. One is the summary, 5-page summary that we've looked at before, and then the complete budget. I'm just going to go through the summary that's provided. On the top, it says General Fund Historical Financial Summary. And same format as we've shown before. And the good news is, I think we're in very good position. From our last meeting, we've received some reductions in expenses. I'll go through those. But the position where we are now, total appropriations $15.3 million, which is 1.7% more than last year's budget. And those increases will be paid for essentially with our increased taxes. And we're staying within the tax cap. So we're not piercing the cap.
Right.
So going up about 2.5% on the taxes will pay for the additional expenses that are in this year's budget.
And most of these, let me just interrupt you for a minute. Most of these expenses are operating costs, right? Costs of insurance and
Correct.
other
So
costs that have gone up at a greater pace than 2.5%, we can say.
absolutely.
All right, just want to make that clear.
Our personnel in particular and general insurance costs are going up anywhere from 7 to 10 to 12% a year. In this past year. Insurance is about 7%. Salaries, depends on the areas, probably mid 5% area, and the benefits are 10 to 12% a year. Retirement, LoSAP, medical in particular.
Which is consistent throughout, the country, right? It's not as if this is.
So my insurance bill is gone up.
Oh, a lot more.
Yeah, general insurance is.
Yeah, 1.7%. So.
The other thing on this page, we're able to, with the expense cutbacks, we're keeping the fund balance appropriation pretty much at the same level as last year. 670,000 versus 656. If you remember, we were approaching $1 million. This is a significant reduction. And the concern was it's $1 million this year, it's $1.3 million next year.
Right.
So we still have concerns in the future because our costs are increasing faster than our revenues. But it helps by trying to keep the unrestricted fund balance in place and not use it to fund our operating costs. So that's, I think we're in a good place for the budget. We turn to page 2. From the last meeting, I've mentioned that we had a few cost reductions. We took one new police officer position out of the budget. So we have essentially this year, we'll be adding 2. We added Michael Parkinson, right? He's one. And we have another opening for a second one to be hired sometime in the next fiscal year.
So on that note, I don't mean to keep interrupting you, but just as we're going through this. So the additional officer that we plan on hiring, right? We're in the process of signing an agreement with the school, which has agreed to pay the half of the median salary of a police officer and half the benefits. So in essence, this additional officer, a substantial portion of his pay and benefits will be paid by the school.
That is correct.
And with that, we will commit an officer to the school at certain hours of operation when school is going on. It's all the details are in the agreement, which will be coming up on the April 9th Board of Trustees meeting.
That's correct.
That's not reflected here, but I'm just letting you know that that's an additional revenue that will be coming in.
So that's excellent, obviously. We also took out, there was an open position for a garage mechanic, which we've taken, it's been in the budget for a couple of years, and I know we've had difficulty in hiring that position, so for the sake of this budget, we took it out. If in fact we find a good candidate somewhere along the way, we'll find a way to put that person.
So like I said, with the agreement with the school, that will help.
And then the other thing we did was, we do fund our reserves. So Mayor, while you asked earlier, are these all operating expenses? Within the 15 million, we have 375,000 of additions to our reserves for the fire, truck, and equipment, ambulance, capital fund.
Right.
So that is part of the 15 million, but we did take out 15,000 from the ambulance vehicle reserve. We were gonna add 15, we just took it out.
Right, and I discussed this with President Hessler, Missy Hessler, and right now I believe that reserve fund is about 290,
294.
294. And it's basically used for purchasing first responders. We are gonna need in the next couple of years, we're going to need a new 80 car, which to outfit it, the cost of the vehicle and to outfit it is about what, 125,000? So I think we're in good shape there, which is why we decided to take that out. Just to try to help a little more with the budget.
I think that's fair. So, and then with the chief retiring at the end of this month, his salary comes out, and within that, we've got the new officer coming in, and we've also contemplated some other changes in promotions or changes in compensation. So you'll notice,
Yeah, one is to increase the salary of the traffic control officers. So that's still in the works.
so we've accommodated, there's pluses and minuses, but you'll see there's some savings in employee benefits, not only because we've eliminated some positions, because also you're taking out a long tenured, expensive employee. The next page, or page 3, changes from the last budget in expenditures. And as we've said, the major expense increases in employee benefits. We've benefiting us this year in being able to keep the expenses under control. $15 million is, we don't have any big projects. Last year, we had the street lighting project. We purchased a harbor boat. It's almost fully paid for, although I think you said it's not gonna be delivered until the end of the year.
Well, that's the fireboat. That's the fireboat.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so then the harbor boat's still on track for the first.
Should be here, next,
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Okay, and we owe like 60,000 on that. But last year's budget, we had a lot of expenditures, plus we did all the work at the docks. And this year, we don't have anything like that.
Right.
So you'll see in the lines for transportation, culture and recreation, large reductions, because we're not replacing those big projects.
Mhm.
Again, that kind of indicates our planning and budgeting is very short-term oriented.
Right.
Like, if we wanted to do another dock renovation, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, we'd either have to finance it with debt or dip into our reserve funds.
Right,
or,
so that's the impetus to develop a capital fund for the village
Yep.
so that we can, these costs can be spread over many years, as they should,
Exactly.
as they should
Right,
be.
right,
That's what-
planned in
yeah,
advance.
Exactly.
right,
Yeah. as they should be.
and keep finding grants.
Oh, keep finding grants, absolutely.
That's-
The best solution of all.
And then on the next page are revenues. So really, we're increasing obviously our taxes to 2.5 something percent. Harbor and docks revenue is decreasing, that's highly dependent on the weather and traffic into the village, so we tend to be conservative about that. And then fire and ambulance, fire, you see, that's our reimbursement from the surrounding towns. I explained last time, the village of Sag Harbor's share of the total assessed values has increased faster than the surrounding towns. So we're retaining a higher portion of our own costs. Or said another way, we're not able to charge out to the other 3 or 4 villages around us for the support as much as we had in the past, because we're a bigger share of the pie.
How do we come up with that number, by the way?
We look at our costs and we basically spread it. We have assessed values for the towns, Noyak, North Haven. And we look at the proportion of the assessed values to the total and just
So it's related to that, some percentage.
correct it with a relative percentage.
And do we make that decision, or does the
Well, I think that's
county?
Agreement,
Right,
we had, this, the agreement we've had for a while, and we do the calculation.
okay,
We did increase the building department's revenue expectation. As we see continued higher activity and fees and, not quite where we were a couple of years ago, but we're certainly on an upward projection, positive projection there as well.
Why is the docks and harbors down so much, the projection?
Well, I think one element is, there's part of the dock that's gonna be restricted as to use at the very end. I think because there's
That was
very
never supposed to be used anyway, go ahead.
And then I think it's just conservative, we've always been relatively, last year was a very good year. And I think, it's nice to have a little bit of conservatism to anticipate any unforeseen expenses.
So we're just, right, it's possible that that number will be
Surpassed.
surpassed.
Yeah.
What we're doing is undercutting it, I guess.
Managing
to a extent.
expectations
Right.
so that we'll be pleasantly surprised at the end of the
Exactly.
season as opposed to
That's,
otherwise.
that's,
It's always easier to deal with the surplus than with the deficit,
Yep.
so.
Thank you.
And that's it for the general fund. So again, the story is within the cap, our expenses are increasing only 1.7%. We're using about 650,000 fund balance out the budget. And then page 5 is the sewer fund, and this is unchanged from the last time, where we are increasing the rates on rents and usage to cover our operating costs. And then in addition, we're gonna take $46,000 of our unrestricted fund balance, to put in our reserve for major expenditures.
And I'd just like to say, just to reiterate my comments the last time, that even though the percentages seem rather large, they're on a very low base. So, we go from $250 to $275 for residential rent, but that represents, a 10% increase. I'd also like to point out that during the COVID years, we didn't increase anything because a lot of our bars and restaurants were really suffering. So as we went through that period, we did try to do our bit as a village, so we held those rates where they were, and even as we came out of COVID, so we're playing a little catch up now. But otherwise, I'm happy with this budget. I think Dee and I have come through this. And we're happy to let this go through. And for all the public meetings we had, I've had no comment either way from any of our customers. So
And as we stated,
that's
this
good.
does not include anything related to the sewer expansion.
no, this is completely separate. It's
Operating
operational.
budget.
Yeah.
So that's it. I'll take any other questions or comments, changes.
I think you've done a great job.
Well,
I think
Since the last meeting of going through this, but.
Right.
um,
Yeah. I mean, I sat down with Lieutenant Drake and we decided that, we would take the second additional officer out and, use that money to boost the TCO salary, possibly promote someone to sergeant, another sergeant, to help restructure the police force. So that's where we're at.
I think this is a very responsible budget, right? Everybody's facing pressures, every town, every village. We're maintaining the expenses and we're driving independent revenue streams as much as possible. And I know we're thinking about some new ideas, right, which we need to continue to do, and that's, I think it's very responsible.
Exactly.
so well done, Charles, for your first.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's always every year, seems to, this is my 7th and seems to get a little more difficult every year. To try and
make it match.
to try and continue to be under the cap. But as you say, if we're creative as far as revenue streams and new revenue streams to the village that don't burden our residents, I'm all for that, and we'll continue to look at every aspect of that, so we can raise revenue.
Charles, does the state ever review the cap?
We have to, you mean to
I
change
mean,
it?
in Albany, like,
So the rule is, it increases, it's 2% increasing by the lower of inflation or 2.5%. So they have maybe 2% inflation, but if real inflation, when it was 0, there was really no increase. So they haven't changed that in years.
Is that a possibility? I would assume it would be. To
Change
react
it?
to the recent inflation, general inflation.
Well, it's coming down. So again, they do it based on, that it's the lower of real inflation or 2%. So you're not getting the benefit of high inflation and raising
Thank you.
taxes.
But it does give us, it does enforce a certain discipline on us, which is, it's good to have that to work out. We have a target every year that we really have to focus on.
Discipline.
Discipline, yeah, no, good.
And I guess it keeps municipalities just from willy-nilly raising
Right.
taxes to pay for whatever.
I know that every line on this budget has been examined by somebody on this
Oh,
board,
yeah.
depending on their various responsibilities, and it's the way it should be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So if we have no more questions on the budget, I'll move to our action items. We have a resolution, March 2024, authorizing requisite insurance coverage in connection with 5 Bridge Street, Sag Harbor sublease agreement. What this is an insurance policy put in place, which the National Grid required. I also checked on the original lease that Bridge LLC had signed with them, and it was part of the insurance requirement. And the cost would be $22,000 over 3 years, which is approximately $7,300 a year. It's gonna work out to. So we need to have this in place in order to obtain control of the gas ball lot.
Right. And this is for any new.
Any new,
environmental
not what
It
is.
doesn't take into consideration anything that's there right now.
Right.
We're not insuring anything. If something was to show up, if it's new.
Correct.
I think it's important everybody understands.
State,
We're not taking.
That we're not taking
responsibility.
state that, that's,
No.
Brownfield.
Yeah,
Exactly.
if something was to show up in the monitoring out there, that's not.
Right, that's not us.
That's not us.
No.
I move that one.
Okay.
And I'll second it.
Motion by trustee Plum, seconded by trustee Corish. All those in favor?
aye.
Opposed? So moved. Second resolution is March 2024, authorizing settlement of insurance claim. This is monies to be paid to the village. It's $100,000 less $15,000 deductible, which would be a net of $85,000. Which we need to approve to receive.
I'll make that motion.
Motion
second
by
it.
trustee Corr, second by trustee Kane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Kane, seconded by trustee Plum. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is now adjourned.
Very efficient.